Everybody, and welcome to today's webinar titled Leveraging APIs, Machine Learning and AI to Empower Your Trading Workflow. Before we get started, I would just like to go through a few housekeeping rules with you all. There is a toolbar screen at the bottom of your screen where you can access resources such as speaker biographies, webinar materials and technical support. Will I remind you there's a Q&A box on your screen, so please submit any questions during the session and the speakers will answer these during the last 10 minutes. Now to introduce our speakers, we have Alex Garib, FX Money Markets Data Analytics, Joe White, Innovation Product Manager at LSEG Labs, Nitish Ramkumar, Lead Data Scientist, LSEG Labs, and Carl Carey, Head of Analytics at LSEG. So now I'd like to pass over to Alex Garib for the first introduction.
Thanks, Robin. Much appreciated. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining our webinar this morning. My name is Alex Garib. I'm responsible for the FX trading desktop business at Refinitiv. And it's pretty exciting right now in terms of what's happening generally in the industry around the evolution of platforms. The agenda for today's webinar effectively is looking at the impact and how you can best leverage APIs, machine learning and AI to empower your trading workflow. So really that's the context of the webinar, is the evolution of platforms. In the context of, are we serving humans? Are we serving machines? Are we serving them both, right? As in where we empower the human trader and let them do what they do best, letting machines do the heavy lifting for them. I'm going to start by introducing our new platform. It's called Workspace for FX Trading, that we recently launched as our next generation desktop for FX traders. This platform leverages the breadth of our content, so our analytics, our price discovery from our LSEG venues, news from Reuters and the editorial teams, insights that uses our data, calculators that allow clients to put in their data. But the key point of all of this is ultimately what it does differently is that it's fully open. It's a fully open platform that allows us to then engage. What does open really mean? It allows us to engage the wider context of what we can provide, not just in the desktop, but outside. So data, analytics, execution APIs, providing our customers with a greater flexibility and customizability, whether inside the desktop, so Workspace, a Jupyter Notebook, Excel, or outside in APIs. And also the ability to integrate both machine learning and AI into that process to drive smarter outcomes and smarter decisions. So that's really what today's all about. So with that, and with no further ado, we have two sessions. The first one is Joe and Nitish, as introduced earlier, from the London Stock Exchange Group Refinitiv Innovation Labs, that will share the latest developments on machine learning and AI-driven currency impact intelligence developed using this very framework. And just before they come on, that'll be followed by Carl Carey, our head of trading analytics. He's going to follow with insight on how you can accelerate innovation by leveraging these open APIs in a codebook. And so it's quite an exciting a session around making the most of your intellectual capital within this framework.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're based. My name is Carl Carey, and I run analytics for trading and banking. As you can infer from my accent, I'm based in, I call New York City home. I've had two prior lives in running sell-side prop and agency trading businesses and in running a fintech tech company, which together have prepared me for running and building out this next generation of apps that are based on codebook technology. Trends I've discussed in some detail there, but I haven't tried to holistically integrate the transformations that are happening across APIs, apps, and AI until today. AI is driving profound changes in financial APIs and in apps, and those transformations are really important to understand. So my plan over the next, say, 10 minutes is to talk through some FX market participants.
Sound issues, Carl, with your mic. Just checking up, putting something over the mic.
Okay.
Okay, you're clear now.
I'm clear now. Okay, so these trends affect all of us. And in Refinitiv, we're trying to move in lockstep so that AI and how it's shaping apps and how it's shaping APIs, that they need to be synchronized. And we'll talk through a little bit about that. So I'll go through a couple of examples. But before I do that, let me just set the context. So APIs are changing. So in the old days, REST API was all you needed. And in the new world, cloud architectures are changing everything. First, data lakes are really important. You can't use warehouses anymore because they're not fast enough. You need more powerful APIs, GraphQL, to handle structured and unstructured data. You just heard a little while ago a discussion around news and other unstructured content. And REST APIs aren't really fast enough and structured enough to be able to access different types of content. Big data and the need to drive these models are also changing APIs. So the performance APIs are changing, the way that you call functions and APIs are changing, and that's driven by this need to drive more intelligence. But APIs aren't the only thing that's changing. There's also a lot more analytics pervasiveness than ever before. So you can get analytics in your market data container. You can get it embedded now in your OMS, and we're pioneering a lot of that. You can also get it in Power BI and in Tableau and in Alteryx and in other analytical applications. So APIs and AI need to kind of work in sync so that you can have it displayed where you are in your workflow. So if you're trading, you need the machine learning to be embedded in your execution workflows. And there's also a lot of more mining around CRM data, customer interactions, flow interactions, and that data and that analytic capability is embedded in those desktops as well. So more analytics ubiquity is also a change in how apps are being delivered. So apps are becoming faster to build. So time to market is a bigger consideration than ever before. Being able to buy and customize is something that didn't exist 10 years ago, and it's a problem. You don't want to have a black box. You want to be able to refine the app so that it can fit into your workflow in the way that you need it to. And so we've spent a lot of time in thinking about the next generation of apps and how you can extend them. And one of the ways you're going to want to extend them is to be able to leverage and harness all of the AI that's out there. I talk about prediction and classification and explaining and clustering and pipelining and featurization. These are all the new buzzwords that are driving insights and are driving the analytics and therefore driving the APIs and the app architectures underneath them. So Codebook. Our vision around Codebook was this thought that apps needed to be different, that apps needed to be open, they needed to be faster, they needed to be developed in a way that a quant or a researcher could do. So you start with a formula, you start with a basic thesis. You don't really want to think about the UI. You want to think about what you're trying to accomplish. In this particular case, this is a very, very simplistic app that just allows you to create holidays and look at value date generation, and uses our internal APIs, and we built an app around it. And this is a very simplistic idea in terms of building an app for, but the idea is you can start with simple apps and you can automate because you're starting from a notebook in our world. So data scientists or MBA students all have to learn how to use Jupyter Notebooks. And when they learn how to use Jupyter Notebooks, they learn Python, and they start to play around with it, and they start to build little scripts that are often useful, but using that in a way that is ergonomic, particularly in the trading floor where time is money and mistakes are really cost ineffective. building an app from the notebook and doing that in an automated way is a new way of thinking about apps. So again, we start with notebooks. It's all open source. We incorporate what we call financial widgets. So this widget that shows calendars. We integrate and evolve the notebooks with our back-end services. So richer APIs than existed before. These are all using GraphQL APIs, and we automate the generation of these apps with a flick of a button. So you can use external Python libraries. You can use any variety of different capabilities and embed them into an app, which is kind of a new way of building apps. And you can build apps that stream. In this particular case, this is an FX cross-matrix calculator that allows you to look at changes in cross-matrix rates, and you can have the ability to set thresholds and have other advanced UI features that the programmer really didn't need to spend any time in building. So this was, again, driven by the need to build applications quickly, but also the need to drive more sophisticated applications. We'll go into that in a minute. Slightly more sophisticated is this new app that we're developing that allows us to benchmark executions on a foreign exchange site. So you can look at benchmarks relative to a close, to an open, to you can look at it in different ways historically, over different time periods. You can look at specific trades and benchmark those. And the APIs behind this include APIs that connect to underlying trade repositories, to your trades, to market data, and all of that means that you don't want to have complexity in your APIs. You want to be able to bring the data together as you need it, when you need it, do the pre-processing, if you can, on the API so that your apps are faster as well. And this is yet another example of how Codebook is making it easier to deliver new apps. As we move forward, we're going to be developing more apps that use more and more complex analytics. And one particular case that we're spending time building is an app that does predictions. We have lots of time series. We've heard our people talk about news and eco time series, but we have price series. We have well over 12 million different time series spanning different disciplines. Taking time series and forecasting time series is something that data scientists typically do. But traders need that capability. Middle office needs that capability. Portfolio managers need that capability as well. What if we could forecast any time series, regardless of type? If it's a foreign exchange time series, as an example, we know economic time series. We've heard that discussed today. Economic time series are important features. But you don't want to have to always ask for data scientists to do that work. What if the machine could auto forecast for you? If it could extract the features, if it could do the dimensionality reduction, if it could train itself, if they could use multiple automated machine learning models, all state of the art, to be able to derive new calculations. And that was our thinking. And could we build a set of APIs to extract the features, to do all the pre-processing, and then to calculate? And this is an app that we're building now. In Codebook, you get the benefits of having data automatically entitled. So the app builder didn't have to worry about entitling data, didn't have to worry about generating features because that came with the libraries that we're using. In this particular case, we used Microsoft's Flamel AutoML library. We used PyCarray, and we used a few others. And so the machine actually picks and chooses which model it picks and chooses based on the choices that you have for how far ahead you want to forecast, whether you want to forecast in minute bars, 5-minute bars, 30-minute bars, a point in the time and future. It will automatically discern what features need to be tried to train the model. So economic features, technical analysis features, Fourier analysis, warping features. So for any particular ticker, we might generate, say, 1,000 features before we start to train the model. And then once we run the model, it's a real-time model. It's reforecasting intraday. And this is the first of several analytical applications that are based on leveraging codebook and the ability to predict and really harnessing the transformations that are happening in the industry around building pipelines into APIs and leveraging our content sets and bringing that all together in an easy way. So an application like this starts at, let's say, 1,000 lines of code. So it's not particularly large, which means we can write lots of applications that are very specific. So if you wanted to write a classification app, this way it's something that we could do as well. So we're trying to build and make it easier to build applications that are analytical applications that are tied to your workflows, that can integrate with your OMS, that can integrate with APIs. And over time, that makes the container workspace for these applications a lot more powerful and a lot more useful. So that's all I have for today. I'm going to pass back to Alex for questions and comments at some point. So here you are, Alex. Go ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Carl. That was really informative. Really appreciate it. In fact, so the questions are starting to trickle in. There's a few here. I'll take them in reverse order. Seeing that, Carl, we've just finished with your session, right? There's a few regarding the use of APIs in Codebook and the use of data in Codebook, and particularly with the approach on machine learning and how that dovetails in. So the question ultimately is, what auto machine learning approaches are you using? I think you mentioned that during your presentation, Carl.
Yeah, so we didn't want to prescribe any particular machine learning approach. So the approach that we took is be able to support many. So we know that there are multiple cloud providers. We wanted to make sure that we support multiple cloud providers. So the common ones that are often used, let's say if you're a Microsoft shop and you're using Azure, you might be using Flamel as well. If you want to be completely separate from your cloud environment and not use a back-end AutoML library, then PyCarray is a popular one. We allow for that. But our plan is to support the top 5 or 6 or so, and so there's overlap, but that's okay, because in the new world, you want to be able to reproduce the result as well. So if you're using this and you're a trader, but your data scientist wants to try something different in a Python script in a codebook notebook, they can. And so you can reproduce, you can really rethink, and we can collaborate together. So if you've got ideas of how to improve your predictions, you have data sources that we don't have that you want to be able to pipe into our platform and keep that secure, those are the kinds of conversations that we're having today with customers, and we're working in that direction.
Thanks, Carl. A reminder to the audience, certainly if you have any questions, feel free to put them in. There's a couple more here, actually a couple on FX Impact Intelligence, if Joe, if I can, and Nitish, if I can aim it your way. So essentially you showed us how we predict or define what is an impact from an impactful from a less impactful event, right? What's the accuracy of us calling what is an impactful event from a non-impactful event, Joe?
Yeah, I can take that. All right, go for it. Go for it. All yours.
Yeah. Now, just it's important to understand what is accuracy here. I know it's like, for example, we understand one thing is like when we are looking at price jumps, for example, not all the price jumps are explained by news, for example. So I think one thing which we have one analysis which we had done was around 40 to 50% of the price jumps we were able to link it to a valid news. So which is impressive, because there are so many other activities which leads to price jumps. So that is one thing. Again, yeah, the most important part here is the filtering down. So as what Joe initially explained, we bring it down to like 1% of the news, which I think for us, we feel like that's really, really valuable. So yeah, Joe, if you have anything to add, please do.
I think you covered it, Tish. Thanks. Yeah, 50 to 6% is like, where you can explain the price moves using breaking news.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nitish, and thanks, Joe. There's a couple others here on that same point. So it says you've separated news and economic events in the UI, and the one I'm actually sharing on the screen right now. What do you do if there's a news about an economic event? So essentially, it's effectively both.
So I can take it initially, and Nitish jump in, but. At the moment, we're actually filtering out economic events that are coming through as news. So what you've seen here is we've split them out. We've got like a news and central bank announcements, and then we have economic events. The evolution of this, I see that all being in kind of one screen, and it's kind of just a daily event monitor. And with that, you don't want news events are about economic events and the economic data announcements coming through together, because it just create more noise. So we've actually filtered out we filtered out all of the economic data announcements that come through as news, and we just bring through the announcements themselves. Nitish, anything to add?
No, yeah, that's pretty much, I think, what you covered. It just, we handled it separately initially, at least, because we had like sort of a different data pipeline to solve this problem. But yeah, at some point, we would like to merge them together.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Nitish and Joe. So look, there's a third one here around, I guess, approach and the challenges that you have in terms of getting where we're getting. Because essentially what we're talking about here is data from our venues. We've got news from our editorial sources, a layering of I guess, AI and machine learning on to try to create some structure and interconnections between these to try to understand really what matters and what doesn't. I mean, the question here is, I think, relating to that, which says, what are the hardest challenges you have to overcome when you're building out this sort of capability, deploying AI and ML, working with unstructured data?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, it's a hard problem to solve, especially in a topic like FX, which is a very sort of macroeconomic topic. It's not easy to always say whether a news or a macroeconomic event has caused some impact on FX. So yeah, a lot of, I think, maybe when we briefly explained this during our presentation, a lot of effort was on the cleaning aspect of it, like trying to bring it down to like the actual meaningful news was a big challenge. So all the work, we put a lot of effort there. I think the other big challenge when it comes to NLP is the validation of it. Like, you build a model, you're saying that this links very well, but how can you prove it? It actually links well. So we had to spend a lot of time actually thinking about how to validate our model and make it go through that process every time we improve the model and see if it is actually improving the solution or not. So two main problems, I would say, like cleaning the volume behind it and how you validate such an NLP model.
Thanks, Nitish. I mean, on that point, I guess the other aspect is about how quick you can actually analyze data. Whether a system like this needs there's a lag in terms of being able to analyze, say, a minute of content or 5 minutes of content before it can actually have a view on any significance of events. There's an interesting question just come through now that asks, any plans about using NLP to analyze live speeches? So speech to transcript to try to understand significance and impact.
Yeah, I can start first, and Joe, you can add in. So it's interesting you mentioned this. Is something which it was sort of like an innovation week project we have as labs. We have these sort of 1 week projects, and we did look into the transcripts, which is the earning calls which are happening by all the public companies. So where the call is actually happening and you sort of like try to follow the script and do some NLP on it. It's sort of like a beta project. It's not something which we have actually like productionized it. But yeah, there is interest. There's there are a lot of tools which help with that from NLP's point of view. So yeah, it's a very interesting space and something which we surely want to like continue working on.
Thanks, Nitish. Moving on, Carl, we've got one here on Codebook, which is asking, is Codebook mostly for quants and data scientists only? Or how's that evolving in terms of the use, particularly in the context of this webinar for traders?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it certainly started as a product that would be used by quants and economic researchers and data scientists and other people who are Python literate. And once you get to the Python literate part, it becomes more interesting because in many larger trading firms now, Python is a requirement. If you're going to be a trader, you need to speak Python. That's not every shop, and but certainly a trend is there. And so we wanted Codebook to be useful to traders who are dabbling, who might need a specific calculations, particularly if they're in derivatives, that they're modeling, they're doing a hedging calculation, but they wanted to use, let's say, deep learning for hedging. And there are libraries that allow you to do that already, and being able to bring that together into a script, into a Codebook notebook was the first stage. And then once you've done that, though, it begs for more. You want to be able to have this and make it available to the other guys on your desk. And that's how we've been thinking, is how do we go from being able to make sure that data scientists can infuse their capabilities into a notebook and take the notebook and transform that to an app that others can use as well. So the idea is to cover the entire spectrum for dried-in-the-wool end users that need the analytics but don't want to build it, all the way back to those who are building and create an ecosystem that works for both.
Thanks, Carl. Great. With that, I think there's no more questions from the audience. So we'll, just before I wrap up, I guess any final remarks or concluding remarks? Joe, Nitish, Carl.
Yeah, maybe I can say, like, for FX Impact Intelligence, it's something that we're actively working on as a business. We hope to have something available by the end of this year. And we'd like to invite anyone on the webinar that's interested in being part of like an early access kind of program to get in touch. And yeah, maybe, we would want to kind of get feedback on kind of what we release and get their input and understand, are we on the right path? So maybe that's one comment. And Alex, maybe we could give people in the email, like, what's the best email address to get in touch if you want to understand more about FX Impact Intelligence.
Indeed, we'll have a follow-up note to go out after the webinar. Thanks for that, Joe. Carl, Nitish, any last comments, or am I good to wrap?
Yeah, well, I'm just starting one. It's interesting. Natural language processing, NLP, is so big from a data standpoint and so complex because you need to train these models that often have billions of parameters. And being able to do that across other kinds of text data sets, and we're just talking about conversations, and being able to map that is a hard problem. So you need partners to work with, because it's so big of data and so big the models that you really need to work with partners that have access to it, because it's too big to move around. So we're glad to work with you and think about new products in this realm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly, our audience are the ones with the challenges we're trying to solve. So, absolutely, we'd love to partner and do more with our clients in a live setting. It's all the APIs and all the tools are there to be rolled out. Okay. So look, just go ahead.
I'll
Nitish,
wrap
go
up
ahead.
with. Yeah, sorry about that. No, I just wanted to add on top of what Carl mentioned, and I agree, right? It's a very tough problem to solve. We faced all the problems from a ML and a NLP point of view, and I mean, you might see a lot of things about how NLP and ML are like just sort of like easily move between one use case to the other. While it can be done theoretically, to get good results, you need to potentially like retrain and make your model customized based on the use case you're working on. So yeah, partners like us, we sort of focus on these sort of things. So yeah, if you have any questions on this topic as well, feel free to reach out. Yeah.
Thanks, Nitish. So look, just to conclude, I think from what we've heard today, I mean, financial markets are undoubtedly automating as they transform digitally, and also to find new ways to innovate, leveraging the very topics we've been speaking about. So AI and machine learning in particular. I guess the intro I was talking about humans versus machines. I guess it's not a case of people or machines, but more machines and smarter, more empowered people. They are leveraging the power of open-end data analytics on a platform, which is effectively what we're trying to do here. And it doesn't stop necessarily with the pre-trade and the analytics piece. There's other things that we're doing that are worth calling out and making you aware of. In our next webinar, we're going to have a look at the next step in the workflow, which is the use of AI and machine learning to improve peer-to-peer collaborative trading. And this is going to coincide with the up-and-coming launch of something we call Refinitiv Advanced Dealing. Now, Advanced Dealing represents an innovative and smart collaborative trading platform that leverages AI and machine learning, very much in the context of what we've been speaking about, to guide traders, and their counterparties from, chatting, from a basic chat to a structured trading ticket, as and when they decide to trade. So it's the next evolution for our conversational dealing capabilities. It's fully supported by contextual access to market data, STP, APIs. Effectively, they can even integrate into FX, pricing engines and so on. But really, the point here is to then help make AI and machine learning do heavy lift in the context of going naturally from unstructured to structured forms of trading. So watch out for that. A webinar invite will be coming your way at some point. So in the meantime, right? We hope the session provided you ideas to improve your productivity. Apologies for the issues we had. Again, this is very early days, very early beta. We're experimenting with our APIs and our capabilities. But in terms of the FX impact intelligence that is due Q4 this year in the product in Workspace for FX Trading, i.e. our next-gen desktop that we've just launched, certainly as both Joe and Nitish said, we'd like to invite you to be part of this early access initiative, to have your say on how we develop these capabilities, right? Particularly with the FX impact intelligence in mind, and advanced dealing, which we'll introduce to you shortly. In terms of getting in touch, we'll send a note after the webinar with contact details, but certainly, please reach out to your Refinitiv relationship or account manager if you'd like to discuss how we can explore these further. And otherwise, look out for the mail after the webinar with the recording, which will provide further contact details. Certainly feel free to share that as you see fit. We've got no more questions on the line. So with that, I'd like to thank the audience for their time on the webinar today. I'd like to thank the speakers for, great context in terms of the direction of travel as we further empower, traders, humans trading, with the use of the latest technology and incorporating AI machine learning together with the APIs that we have available to access our data, our analytics, and our liquidity. And with that, I'll end the call. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.